Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we will be discussing the next topic in the rheumatology revision series, which is rheumatoid arthritis. Basically, we divide rheumatology into three groups. First group is lupus group, which includes SLE, scleroderma, Sjogren's syndrome, mixed connective tissue disorder, and lupus. The second group is arthritis group, which includes rheumatoid arthritis, spondyloarthropathies, crystal induced arthritis, and Charcot joints. And the third group is vasculitis, which includes small, medium, and large vessel vasculitis. We will see the detailed approach to arthritis in some other lecture. Today's focus will be rheumatoid arthritis. So, as with other autoimmune diseases, RA is common in 30 to 50 years of age group and commonly seen with female sex. Friends, if you want to complete the rheumatology in 20 days, you can plan your revision according to this schedule. Today we are seeing the rheumatoid arthritis. The other lectures will be premiered on the given dates at 6 p.m. only on YouTube. Just go through the chapter from the book once before attending the session for better understanding. So starting with the lecture, the first question is, when compared with patients with rheumatoid arthritis who do not have anti-cyclic citrullinated protein antibodies, which is also known as ACPA antibodies, patients with RA who have anti-CCP antibodies are. The options are less likely to develop extra-articular manifestations of RA like vasculitis, less likely to have a history of smoking, have fewer subchondral bone erosions on imaging over their disease course, have higher prevalence of shared epitope HLA DRB1 risk alleles, or have lower scores for physical disability. So basically we have to tell that the patients who have anti-CCP antibodies positive, which option will be correct. Now to answer this question, let's discuss the pathogenesis in brief. Firstly, serum antibodies to cyclic citrullinated peptides, also known as anti-CCP antibodies, are routinely included along with rheumatoid factor in the diagnostic evaluation as well as prognostication in patients with RA. So anti-CCP antibodies are associated with increased likelihood of severe disease. This includes bone erosions as well as physical disability. So there is increased physical disability if the patient is positive for anti-CCPs. Now when we consider the extra-articular manifestations, these develop in 40% of patients of RA, sometimes even prior to the onset of arthritis. The risk factors for extra-articular manifestations include smoking history, early onset physical disability, and positive rheumatoid factor or anti-CCP antibodies. Therefore, anti-CCP antibody positivity are associated with increased risk of extra-articular manifestations in RA. Now, when we consider the patient of RA who is positive for anti-CCP antibodies, the disease associations can be genetic or environmental. The genetic risks include allelic variation in HLA-DR B1 gene, which encodes for MHC2 beta chain molecule. Now, this disease association HLA-DR1 has sharing of amino acid sequence of HLA-DR beta. So, it has a sharing of amino acid with HLA-DR beta. This is known as shared epitope. Now, among the environmental association, the most important is cigarette smoking, which leads to 1.5 to 3.5 times increased risk of developing RA. So, coming back to the question, the patients with anti-CCP antibodies are less likely to develop extra-articular manifestation. This is a wrong option because these are more likely to develop extra-articular manifestation. Second, are less likely to have a history of smoking? No. These are more likely to have history of smoking. Develop fewer subchondral bone erosions on imaging? Wrong. There is increased risk of bone erosions as well as physical disability in patients who are positive for anti-CCP. Therefore, the option E will also be wrong. So, the correct option is these patients have a higher prevalence of shared epitope to HLA-DRB1 risk alleles. So, we are done with the first question. Now, the second question is, which of the following is most frequent site of joint involvement in established RA? Options are distal interphalangeal joint, hip joint, knee joint, spine, or wrist joint. Now, this question will help us discuss the articular manifestations of RA. So, firstly, the incidence of RA increases between 25 to 55 years of age. The presenting symptoms typically result from inflammation of joints, tendons, as well as bursa. Now, the patients often complain of early morning stiffness lasting for more than 1 hour, and it typically decreases with physical activity. As soon as the patient starts that routine activity, the morning stiffness will decrease. It is typically a symmetrical bilateral arthritis which can be monoarticular, oligoarticular, or polyarticular when it is involving more than 5 joints. Now, the most common and earliest joints involved are small joints like wrist, metacarpophalangeal, and proximal interphalangeal joints. Now, it is important to note that distal interphalangeal joint is almost always paired in RA. It is not involved by the pathology of RA, but it can be involved if there is coexisting osteoarthritis. So, if the patient of definite RA is presenting to you and DIP joint is also involved, then you should suspect accompanying osteoarthritis in such patient. Few important deformities which everyone should know. The deformities in upper limb include trigger finger, which typically occurs due to flexor tendon tenosynovitis. There can be swan neck deformity, which is due to hyperextension of proximal interphalangeal joint with flexion of distal interphalangeal joint. Now, the reverse of this will lead to Buttoneye deformity. This is hyperextension of DIP with flexion of PIP. Radial deviation of wrist with alert deviation of fingers lead to Z deformity. Piano key movement of ulnar styloid occurs due to subluxation of distal ulna. There can be gamekeeper's thumb deformity or carpal tunnel syndrome. Now, when we consider the deformities in lower limb, there is typical broadening of forefoot due to swelling of metatarsophalangeal joints. Patient can develop flat feet and hallux valgus and hammer toe deformity may be seen. Now, large joint involvement is typically seen late in the course of the disease. So, knees, ankles, elbows, hips, shoulders, all are commonly involved but later than the small joints. These are usually very late in the disease course. Now, the involvement of shoulder joint is in the form of glenohumeral arthritis, rotator cuff fraying, and finally rupture. Synovial cyst can develop, typically Baker's cyst, which is the name given for the cyst developing in the popliteal fossa. So, coming back to the question, the most frequent site of joint involvement in established RA are small joints like wrist, metacarpophalangeal joints, and proximal interphalangeal joints. So, this becomes the answer. DIP joint is not involved by RA, it can be involved by accompanying osteoarthritis. And these joints can be involved but later than the smaller joints. Friends, you can download the PDF of this lecture from the MediLectures app, which is available on Play Store as well as iOS. You can also attempt free tests and various quizzes. You can also check out Harrison-based test series course on the app, which includes various tests and WhatsApp group membership. Now, coming on to the next question. Which part of spine is most commonly affected in RA? This is an easy one, but we are discussing these questions so that we can discuss the whole topic. So, the most common part of spine is atlantoaxial joint of cervical spine, which leads to compressive myelopathy, which clinically presents as quadriparesis. Now, it typically develops in less than 10% of the patients of RA very late in the disease course. Now, very rarely, very rarely, thoracic or lumbar spine can be involved, which is commonly involved in spondyloarthropathies. Now, other rare joints include temporomandibular joint and cricoarytenoid joint, which presents as hoarseness of voice and inspiratory stridor. So, these joints are very rarely involved in RA. So, the answer to our question will be cervical spine. Alright, this is an interesting one which will help us discuss all the extra articular manifestations of the disease. So question is, patients with RA are at higher risk for all of the following health conditions than general population except. Options are colorectal cancer, coronary artery disease, lymphoma or osteoporosis. This is a very nice figure given in the textbook which is showing all the extra articular manifestations from head to toe. So starting with the ocular manifestation, there can be keratoconjunctivitis sicca, episcleritis, scleritis. There can be some oral manifestations like xerostomia, neurological manifestations, cervical myelopathy. Then we have pulmonary manifestations. These we will be discussing in detail in the upcoming slides. Just we have to visualize this figure. Then there can be cardiac manifestations. GI, there can be involvement in the form of vasculitis. Renal manifestations can be membranous nephropathy or secondary amyloidosis. There is secondary osteoporosis. There is hypoandrogenism, and skin manifestation include nodules, purpura and pyoderma gangrenosum. So let's discuss these individual manifestations in detail. So firstly, the constitutional features include weight loss, fever, fatigue, malaise, depression, and in most severe cases, there can be associated cachexia in rheumatoid arthritis. Now, subcutaneous nodules are seen in about 30 to 40% of the patients, and these are associated commonly in those with highest levels of disease activity. The incidence of subcutaneous nodule has recently decreased due to early DMARD therapy. Now, these are typically firm, non-tender, adherent to periosteum, tendons or bursa. Secondary Sjogren syndrome can be associated with RA and is defined by either keratoconjunctivitis sicca, which is dry eyes, or xerostomia, which is dry mouth. It is typically seen in 10% patients of RA. Coming on to the various systems, the pulmonary manifestations include pleural effusions, pulmonary nodules, interstitial lung disease, vasculitis, and organizing pneumonia. Now, these pulmonary manifestations will be further discussed in detail in the upcoming questions. The cardiac manifestations include, most commonly, pericarditis, ischemic heart disease, myocarditis, cardiomyopathy, arrhythmias, and the most common valvular lesion is mitral regurgitation. When we consider the most common cause of death in RA, it is the cardiovascular disease. Now coming on to the vasculitis, firstly, what are the risk factors of developing vasculitis in RA? These include long-standing disease, positive rheumatoid factor or anti-CCP antibodies, and hypocomplementemia. Now this typically presents as petechiae, purpura, digital infarcts, gangrene, levato reticularis, painful ulcers. Also, sometimes sensory motor polyneuropathies may also associated with rheumatoid vasculitis. Now, when we consider the hematological abnormalities, the most common one is normocytic normochromic anemia. Others include neutropenia, splenomegaly, and Felty syndrome. Basically, it is the combination of seropositive RA, splenomegaly, and neutropenia. Now, leukemia like large granular lymphocytic leukemia and lymphomas can also be associated with rheumatoid arthritis. Now, there is a 2 to 4 fold increased risk of lymphoma in RA. The most common type is diffuse large B cell lymphoma, and there is increased risk if it is present with Felty syndrome. Now, for osteoporosis, there is 20 to 30% prevalence in RA. It is due to generalized activation of osteoclast and steroid use as a therapy. Also, there is hypoandrogenism. There is lower mean serum testosterone, dihydroepiandrosterone, and luteinizing hormone in males as well as postmenopausal females of rheumatoid arthritis. So, these all are the extra-articular manifestations typically seen in RA. So, coming back to our question, patients with RA are at higher risk for all of the following health conditions except. So, it is seen that coronary artery disease is commonly seen, lymphoma has increased risk, osteoporosis is commonly seen. So, the correct option will be colorectal cancer. This is not associated with RA. Alright, next question. In patients with established RA, all of the following pulmonary radiographic findings may be explained by their rheumatologic condition except. Options are bilateral interstitial infiltrates, bronchiectasis, lobar infiltrate, solitary pulmonary nodule, or unilateral pleural effusion. So let's discuss the pulmonary manifestations in detail. Alright, so most common pulmonary manifestation of this disease is pleuritis, which may produce pleuritic chest pain, dyspnea, pleural friction rub, as well as pleural effusion. Now, when we consider the pleural effusion, these tend to be exudative with increased monocytes and neutrophils. So, as with other exudative cause of pleural effusion, these effusions will be usually unilateral. Now, interstitial lung disease can also develop in rheumatoid arthritis and is generally associated with cigarette smoking and high disease activity. When we do HRCT thorax, the two patterns are usually found, which are usual interstitial pneumonia pattern and non-specific interstitial pneumonia pattern. In UIP pattern, there are honeycomb changes in periphery and lower portions of lung, while in NSIP pattern, there is bilateral ground glass opacities, fine reticulations, volume loss, as well as tractional bronchiectasis. The pulmonary function test for both of these patterns will show restrictive pattern with reduced DLCO, that is diffusion lung capacity for carbon monoxide. Now, patient can also have pulmonary nodules which can be solitary as well as multiple. Kaplan syndrome is the combination of seropositive RA along with Cole-Workers pneumoconiosis or silicosis. Patients can also rarely present with respiratory bronchiolitis and bronchiectasis. So, we have discussed all the pulmonary manifestation. Let's get back to the question. So, the question is basically which pulmonary radiographic finding will not be present in rheumatoid arthritis. So, we have seen bilateral interstitial infiltrates can be seen with interstitial lung disease. Rarely bronchiectasis can develop. Also with ILD, tractional bronchiectasis can develop. Pulmonary nodules can be solitary as well as multiple. Unilateral pleural effusion can develop. So the option which is correct is lobar infiltrate. Since lobar infiltrate has not been described to be caused by RA and it is more commonly caused by acute infectious etiology, often as a complication of immunosuppressive therapy which we give in rheumatoid arthritis. It is not due to the rheumatological condition itself. So going to the next question. Type of anemia seen in RA is, we have already discussed it in extra-articular manifestations. The type is normocytic normochronic anemia, but we will discuss the hematological manifestations in detail. So the most common hematological abnormality is normocytic normochromic anemia. Now the various causes of anemia in rheumatoid arthritis can be anemia of chronic disease, GI bleed secondary to NSAIDs or steroid use, folate deficiency which is induced by methotrexate treatment, marrow suppression by the disease itself, and hypersplenism if there is associated splenomegaly. When we consider the platelet count, thrombocytosis is commonly seen. In WBC counts, eosinophilia with mild leukocytosis is common. Now, what is Felty's syndrome? It is a triad of neutropenia, splenomegaly, and nodular rheumatoid arthritis. It is seen only in less than 1% of the patients, and further incidence is declining due to the aggressive therapy. It usually occurs in very late stages of disease. Now there is one leukemia which has similar presentation to Felty syndrome. Which one is that? It is T cell large granular lymphocyte leukemia. But as opposed to the Felty syndrome, this TLGL may develop early in the course of RA while Felties develop late in the course of RA. So there are only three conditions in rheumatoid arthritis which leads to leukopenia. So what are these? First one is Felty syndrome, which develops neutropenia. Similar to Felty's will be T cell large granular lymphocyte leukemia, and third one is as a side effect of drug therapy. So these all are the hematological manifestations. So answer to that question will be normocytic normochromic anemia. Coming on to the next question, score 3 in ACR Euler classification criteria is given to how many joints involvement? Options are 2 to 10 large joints, 1 to 3 small joints, 4 to 10 small joints, or more than 10 joints. So let's see this ACR Euler classification criteria. First, the mistake with many students do is considering this as diagnostic criteria. So this is not a diagnostic criteria, it is just a classification criteria, and it serves to distinguish patients at the onset of disease who have a high likelihood of evaluation to the chronic disease with persistent synovitis and joint damage. So this is not a definite diagnostic criteria. So let's see this criteria. It has joint involvement, it considers serology, acute phase reactants, and duration of symptoms. So this should be tested in the patient only in the early stages. So score 0 for joint involvement is for 1 large joint, score 1 is for 2 to 10 large joints, score 2 is 1 to 3 small joints, score 3 is 4 to 10 small joints, and score 5 is more than 10 joints. So there is no score 4 for joint involvement. So the answer to our question will be 4 to 10 small joints. Now for serology, if both rheumatoid factor and anti-CCPs are negative, it will give 0. If low positive RF or low positive anti-CCP, either one of these is positive, which is less than equal to 3 times of the normal upper normal limit, this will give the score 2. If it is high positive, then this will give the score 3. So there is no score 1 in serology. For acute phase reactants and duration, only score 0 and 1 is there for both. If the CRP and ESR is normal, score 0. If it is abnormal, score 1. If for duration, if it is for less than 6 weeks, it is 0. More than equal to 6 weeks, this will be chronic, and this will give the score 1. So basically, if the total score in the patient, if it comes out to be more than equal to 6 out of 10, which is the maximum score, it makes it as definite RA. Although other clinical features and investigations will be required for the diagnosis, but this will give a rough idea of definite rheumatoid arthritis. So answer to this question is 4 to 10 small joints. Alright, now coming on to a easier one. Rheumatoid arthritis is seen with HLA DR3, DR4, DR27 or B27. So let's see HLA association in various autoimmune diseases. Firstly, B27 is usually seen with spondyloarthropathies including ankylosing spondylitis, post-gonococcal arthritis, and acute anterior uveitis. DR2 has association with SLE and myasthenia gravis. DR3 is associated with autoimmune hepatitis, primary Sjogren syndrome, DM type 1, SLE, dermatitis herpetiformis. DR4 is associated with rheumatoid arthritis and DM type 1, and B5 has a specific association with Behcet disease. So SLE will have association with DR2, DR3. DM type 1 will have association with DR3, DR4, and the answer to our question that rheumatoid arthritis has association with HLA DR4. So next question, all of the following infectious agents are implicated in pathogenesis of RA except. Options are Epstein-Barr virus, Porphyromonas gingivalis, Bordetella pertussis, or Prevotella copri? Now you will be able to answer this question only if you are reading the 21st edition of Harrison, that is latest edition. So in addition to the genetic predisposition, a host of environmental factors have been implicated in the pathogenesis of RA. Now the most reproducible environmental link is cigarette smoking. It has a relative risk of developing RA which is 1.5 to 3.5 times. Now some infectious agents are also implicated whose role although is not proven. These includes Epstein-Barr virus, Porphyromonas gingivalis and Prevotella copri. So Epstein-Barr virus has been shown frequent association with arthritis. Also, IgG antibodies against Epstein-Barr virus are commonly found in patients of RA. There is positive association as Epstein-Barr virus DNA is also found in synovial fluid in RA patients. Now, for Porphyromonas gingivalis, recent studies shown that periodontitis may play a role in pathogenesis of this arthritis. But how? The immune response which is against the P. gingivalis may trigger development of autoimmunity leading to RA. Now, Prevotella copri is also recently implicated as it was the gut microbe found rich in untreated rheumatoid arthritis patients. So, all of these infectious agents are associated except for Bordetella pertussis. So, this is the correct answer. Now, the next question is asking about the staging of RA. So, which is the first stage in the pathology of RA? Options are synovitis, pannus formation, bone erosion, or joint destruction. So, we will briefly discuss this staging with the help of just a diagram. So, on the left side, we have the normal anatomy of the bone, which includes outermost synovial membrane. Then there is cartilage end plate at the end of the bone, and there is the bone. So the first stage in RA is the inflammation of this synovial membrane. So there will be inflammation of synovial membrane which is denoted by a blue color. So the first stage is synovitis. Then there is pannus formation on the cartilage end plates. It is just a inflammatory fibrous tissue which is forming due to the disease activity. Then it will include the bone as well, which leads to bone erosion. Finally, there will be destruction of joint and formation of deformity. So the first stage in the pathology of RA is synovitis. Alright, this next question is also an easier one, but this will help us discuss all the investigations in rheumatoid arthritis. So the question is, which of the following is the earliest plain radiographic finding of RA? Options are juxta-articular osteopenia, no abnormality, soft tissue swelling, subchondral erosions, or symmetric joint space loss. So it is asking for plain radiography. So let's see the investigations in rheumatoid arthritis. So firstly, as we discussed, we go for serology including rheumatoid factor and anti-CCP antibodies. Then as a marker of acute inflammation, we can note anemia of chronic disease. There is associated thrombocytopenia, raised CRP and ESR. Other autoantibodies commonly seen in RA include ANA and ANCA. So it stands for anti-nuclear antibody and anti-neutrophilic cytoplasmic antibody. These are seen positive in 30% of patients, about 30% of the patients of RA. Now we can also go for synovial fluid analysis. So in rheumatoid arthritis, we'll see 5,000 to 50,000 WBCs per microliter, and these will be predominantly neutrophils. Now, how will we differentiate osteoarthritis with RA on the basis of synovial fluid? This osteoarthritis is a non-inflammatory condition. Non-inflammatory because it is a destructive condition. It is a destructive arthritis. The WBC count will be typically less than 2000 per microliter. So this way we can differentiate it with osteoarthritis. In RA, no crystals or organisms will be present. So crystals are usually present in crystal-induced arthritis like gout or pseudo-gout, and organisms can be seen with septic arthritis. So these will not be seen in the synovial fluid of RA. Also, we test for latent tuberculosis with the help of Montague's test or other newer methods before initiating the biological treatment, because the patients with latent TB, the biologicals are contraindicated as it can flare up the manifest TB. Now coming on to the joint imaging. It is a critical tool for both diagnosis as well as monitoring of the disease status in RA. Firstly, plain radiographs, because of their ready availability and ease of film comparison, are most commonly ordered. The earliest finding on plain X-ray is juxta-articular osteopenia. So this is the answer to our question. Other findings include soft tissue swelling, symmetrical joint space loss, and subchondral erosions. Now, other imaging methods include MRI as well as ultrasound. So, MRI has a greatest sensitivity for detecting synovitis, joint effusion, as well as early bone marrow damage. So, the earliest finding on MRI will be bone marrow edema, but the limitations include high cost and low availability. So, what are the advantages of USG? It can detect synovitis. Also, it can detect increased joint vascularity, basically the inflammation of the joint. Advantages include it is portable, has lack of radiation similar to MRI, but at the same time with low cost. So, these are all the investigations for RA. So, the correct answer to this question will be juxta-articular osteopenia. Now, we are left with the three last questions which will be directing us towards the treatment of RA. So the questions include, all of the following agents have been shown to have disease modifying anti-rheumatic drug efficacy in patients with rheumatoid arthritis except. So basically, which of the following are DMARDs in this list? So we have to identify which one is not a DMARD. The options are infliximab, leflunomide, methotrexate, naproxen, and rituximab. So let's discuss the medical management of RA. Firstly, it includes symptomatic pain relief with the help of NSAIDs like naproxen. Then for decreasing the inflammation, we have glucocorticoids. And finally, we have DMARDs. Now these DMARDs include conventional disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs and biological DMARDs, which are also known as biologicals. So conventional DMARDs include methotrexate, hydroxychloroquine, sulfasalazine, leflunomide, azathioprine, and gold D-penicillamine minocycline, which are not used nowadays. Other biologicals we will discuss in the upcoming question. So these all are DMARDs. So the correct option will be naproxen, which is a NSAID. So the correct option is naproxen. Next question. A 35-year-old female diagnosed with RA was started on NSAIDs along with methotrexate. Obviously along with steroids also. Now CBC, LFTs and viral hepatitis panel as well as chest x-ray were ordered by the physician before commencing methotrexate treatment. Now what all investigations will be required for monitoring methotrexate toxicity and at what interval? So these are the various options. These include CBC creatine LFTs every 2 to 3 months or every 6 months, or CBC and LFTs every 2 to 3 months or every 6 months. So I request everyone to just comment down your answer in the live chat and let's see you are correct or not. I'll give you 10 seconds. Just comment down in the live chat, not in the comment box. Alright, so let's discuss the conventional DMARDs used in RA. So starting with the methotrexate, because it is the first choice drug in RA and it is considered as the backbone of therapy. Now the dose is typically 10 to 25 milligram per week, which can be given orally or subcutaneous. Along with this, we have to give folic acid 1 milligram per day to reduce the toxicity. Now the serious toxicities include hepatotoxicity, bone marrow suppression, interstitial lung disease. Also, it is teratogenic. It is teratogenic, therefore considered as category X for pregnancy. Also, at higher doses, it leads to renal toxicity. Now, initial evaluation will include CBC, LFT, viral hepatitis panel, and chest X-ray. And for monitoring of toxicity, we go for CBC, creatinine, and LFTs for every 2 to 3 months. Now, the second choice drug is hydroxychloroquine. The second choice drug is hydroxychloroquine, and a good point is that it is safe for pregnancy. Typical dose is 200 to 400 milligram per day, but a limiting side effect is irreversible retinal damage, which is known as bullseye maculopathy. So for initial evaluation, we go for eye examination if the patient is more than 40 years or has prior ocular disease. And for monitoring, we go for OCT and visual field testing every 1 year. Now the third drug is sulfasalazine. It is also a pregnancy safe drug. The dose ranges from 500 milligram to 3 grams daily. Toxicity includes granulocytopenia, hepatotoxicity, and anemia. So we have to monitor with CBC every 2 to 4 weeks, then every 3 months. Now the last is leflunomide. It is rarely used. It is given for loading dose 100 milligram per day for 5 days. Then the maintenance dose is about 10 to 20 milligram per day. Side effects include hepatotoxicity, bone marrow suppression, etc. Also, it is teratogenic, therefore considered as pregnancy category X. The monitoring is same as with methotrexate, that is CBC, creatine, LFT every 2 to 3 months. So this was a brief discussion about DMARDs. The correct option will be that for methotrexate monitoring, CBC, creatinine, and LFTs have to be done every 2 to 3 months. Okay, so finally coming on to the last question. Which of the following is JAK inhibitor used in treatment of RA? Options are tocilizumab, anakinra, tofacitinib, or abatacept. So for this question, let's discuss all the biologicals in detail. Firstly, rheumatoid arthritis is due to imbalance between pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cytokines. Basically, the pro-inflammatory cytokines increase and anti-inflammatory cytokines decrease. So when we consider these pro-inflammatory cytokines, the most potent one is TNF alpha. Now this along with interleukin 1 will stimulate T cells, and this further stimulates intracellular signaling pathways. Also there is stimulation of interleukin 6, which stimulates B cells formation of antibodies, which again signals intracellular signaling pathway. Now, an example of this pathway is JAK pathway, which is known as Janus associated kinases. So, accordingly, we will discuss the drugs. So, we have anti-TNF alpha agents including etanercept, infliximab, adalimumab, golimumab, and pegylated certolizumab. Now, anti-IL-1 agent include anakinra. T-cell agents include abatacept. Anti-IL-6 agent include tocilizumab. Anti-B cell, which is CD20 antibody, it is rituximab. And finally, the JAK2 inhibitor, which is inhibiting the Janus associated kinase, is tofacitinib. It is the first oral biological which is developed for rheumatoid arthritis. So these are all the biologicals which are currently used in rheumatoid arthritis. Now, what is the most dreaded complication of this biologicals use? It can lead to reactivation of dormant or latent TB. Therefore, before starting the biological therapy, every patient should undergo testing for latent tuberculosis. So, coming back to the question, tocilizumab is anti-IL-6, anakinra is anti-interleukin 1, tofacitinib is JAK inhibitor, and abatacept is inhibiting the T cells. So the correct option is tofacitinib. So this is all about this lecture on rheumatoid arthritis. I hope I have covered almost all the important points. If you are liking this series, kindly hit the like button, share it with your friends, and also comment any doubts if you have some doubts. Thank you so much.